Greetings, welcome back to Black Bear News, where we are discussing abrupt climate change. And I don't think you all can hear in the distance from the classic rock radio station from my neighbor. We have some Soundgarden Black Days, which is one of my favorite songs, so kind of appropriate. We're also getting some ambient garden tools, motorized garden tool noise. Maybe I'll pause this and wait till there's less sound going on, because that's annoying. Okay, it seems to have abated for now. I'll try to continue. A little bit chilly today here in LA. We've suddenly snapped. This seems to be kind of an ongoing feature of this year's climate or weather, is that, super hot, snapping into either cold or unseasonably cold. But anyways, I'll take it while I can get it, because my plants are just frying in the sun, the UV, whatever is going on is just really taking a toll on my garden. And I'm trying to figure out ways to mitigate the damage. But that is a story for another day. I got a lot of really good comments. I got so many comments that I wanted to read. It's not possible for me to read them all, but I'm going to read a few. And I also, just wanted to touch on the fact that, I get pretty good feedback from you guys. Thank you, about many issues, either things I'm talking about or, sound quality or whatever's going on. The sound quality thing, I'm not sure about. I don't hear any of it, so I don't know, I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it's an effect of possibly the bit rate or sound quality going down when I upload my videos. I don't know where in the process the distortion is coming from. I don't know. I don't know if it's end user. For the most part, I feel like it's end user or whatever device you're listening on. So I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out. So just letting you know, sit tight. Trying to deal with it. But some of the, it's funny, some of the comments from people who are like, why are you talking about this conspiracy stuff? And take off the tinfoil hat or whatever. I want to alert you guys that the ones that are making these comments, that you sound just like the climate deniers that are like, this is all a bunch of hooey. This is a hoax. This is crazy stuff. Where's the evidence? As I'm sitting here day after day after day after day presenting evidence. I'm not necessarily presenting evidence on conspiracies, because that's not what this channel is about. But trust me when I say that I would not present something that didn't have quite a bit of evidence behind it. And if I was unsure in any way about the amount of evidence behind it, which I am about certain things, chemtrails being one of them, I will state, I'm not totally like, this isn't like something I'm running, down the field with at full speed, because, my opinion about it is not, at 90% or whatever, 80 or 90%. It's more at like 40 or 50%. So, it's good to understand nuance and distinctions about what, we live in a society right now where, we want to paint everything black and white, and that's it is indicative of cognitive or emotional disorders when people see things in black and white, that things are all this way or all this way. and I'm not necessarily painting, you know, particular commenters or viewers of this channel with that brush, but I'm saying in society right now, and especially on the internet, it seems to be, that seems to be a common theme, is that everything is, you know, all these people over here are insane, they're crazy, you know, and that's how we denounce, you know, a whole portion of society and or a whole portion of thought. That's how we don't, you know, keep ourselves from understanding, you know, where somebody else is coming from or what they might be thinking. Is this kind of reactionary, kind of knee-jerk, like hysteria, you know? And again, I was talking with a friend about that as well, about the kind of, you know, the hysterical nature of people on the internet, you know, just when things happen, you know, you know, my timeline is filled with, you know, every time Trump tweets something or says something or does something, everybody's like, oh my God, what an insane, crazy, like, oh, lunatic. And like, yes, you know, big problems there. But the thing is, you know, I'm not discounting anybody's feelings about Trump or the fact that they might think that he's a serious problem or a serious threat. The thing is that the hysterical nature of the reaction doesn't allow someone to take a deeper look at what's going on, right? There might be nuances about a news story or things that are happening that one could benefit from understanding. And you lose all that nuance, you lose all that like ability to great, you know, to understand what's really going on when it just becomes this like hysterical outpouring of derision or hate, you know, for whoever, for whatever side, you know, whether it's right or left. This is very problematic. It's problematic on some levels. It's childish. It's not, you know, it is not a higher consciousness. It's not an intelligent reaction. It's not a scientific reaction to whatever it is that is going on or what somebody is talking about, you know. So I just urge people, anybody, you know, anybody, just a random viewer to this channel or people that follow this channel every day, you know, I urge people to, you know, before you react, you know, try to think about what is actually going on. You know, react is way down the line from, you know, something happens, you see something, you know, you're like, you have an immediate reaction to it, an emotional reaction, that's really, really bad, or this is really great, or whatever. Maybe stop the reaction first and then, you know, take a look and try to understand it. And this is something that I try to practice in my life as well. I have difficult times not reacting to things. You know, so it's just good practice as a human being to, you know, not just like react out of just, you know, fear or disgust or disdain, you know, right away. Possibly just take a measured look at what is going on, you know, maybe even try to dig deeper and understand what's the reality about this. What does this really mean? What are both sides of the issue? You know, what are all the factors? What is everybody saying? You know, go through all those things first and then get your reaction, you know, whatever, at least give yourself 10 minutes, whatever it might be. But anyways, I digress. I'm going to read a couple of really good comments. There were other really great comments that I just don't have time to get into. And I didn't even start my timer, so the video starts now, right? This is from Jan Deligans. I'm always so floored by people's faith in technology. I read an article about that carbon capture discovery by none other than Bill Gates and other of the top elites of our society. I would rather use the gifts of Mother Nature than trust Bill Gates. But people won't even do the obvious and easy solution. Cut out your necessary use of energy. It's so easy. Unplug your garage door opener and get out of your car and open the door with your hand. This saves you way more energy than you think, because that opener is on for 24/7 seeking that remote. No one needs a garage door opener unless you are handicapped. I have said this to many people, and not one has responded with a, gee, you're right. But instead, I have lost friends over it. But truly, we lived for decades without them, and no one needed it. Excellent point there, Jan. Where am I? Think of the factories that would be shut down and the power that would be saved. Now think of all the other unnecessary things we do, like closing our wet clothes into a tiny drum and spinning it with limited ventilation until they are dry, which is a pretty long time for such a dumb idea. Hang them on a line or a pole. We hang ours on hangers, then go on a pole we place over the top of 2 chairs. They dry like magic. Sometimes our clothes dry faster outside than in the dryer. Using an electric clothes dryer is like swatting a fly with a nuclear bomb. Think of the infrastructure that could be saved if we just all hung our clothes in or out to dry. We could cut our energy use dramatically with just using our common sense and creativity to stop thinking always that we have to buy something to accomplish things. I love this comment. To show how much a difference people can make just by making better choices. At our former house, we used under 300 kilowatts a month consistently. That is damn good. When we left the house and the renters moved in, they used on average 1,500 kilowatts. Conservation is the most immediate solution to climate change. Drive and fly less. But I've quit saying anything to anyone. People were a little open to such an approach about 10 years ago, but now they would rather risk extinction than make some easy life changes. I don't get it. The carbon capture myth is just a distraction. Unplugging your garage door opener would be way more effective. Excellent, stupendous, amazing, astounding. I like that comment. And it's very true. I mean, we have so much power in our own actions. I cannot stress enough the importance of doing what you can do to mitigate your, I feel like people who say like, lowering your carbon footprint, doesn't really make much of an impact. And it's really all about the powers that be and the corporations. And it's not either or, it's both. It's both. But the thing is this, the corporations have power because we keep giving them that power. That's the thing that we need to really understand is that, if 1 million people or 2 million people could make a pledge to not buy gasoline, for a week or whatever. I understand how, how complicated, people could, look into that, like, oh, you'll just buy all the gas before the week, or you'll, blah, 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 blah. But the thing is that kind of stand, that kind of commitment, by a mass of people could really alert people to what the problem is, because nobody cares. Everybody's just buying gas. Like, we got to buy gas. We're just going to go buy gas. Like, why would we not buy gas? Like, don't talk to me about not buying gas. Like, that's stupid, right? That's how everybody thinks. But if a couple million people were like, I'm not going to, we're going to pledge to not buy gas for a week because it's destroying the earth. A lot of people would be like, oh, yeah, it is destroy. Okay. Well, shoot. Yeah. Maybe I could do that, like that act alone, could greatly change a lot of people's minds. And that act alone would cost the oil companies a lot of money. They would take notice immediately if people were doing stuff like that. And I think that they're taking notice already, because we have quite a few people who've committed to not driving. There's problems in the oil industry. And one of those problems is demand over the last few years. Now, of course, now we have Trump kind of like telling everybody like, it's okay, come on, like, more oil. But, one of the problems in the last few years was demand, and it was driving the price down of oil. And it was seriously on, oil companies and oil investors were on the brink of going bankrupt and having serious problems keeping their operations open. That's what we want. That's the kind of stuff that we need to do, and it is little things like turn off your computer. Like, don't leave your computer on all day. I know thousands of people that do that. Thousands. That's how many people I know. No, but seriously, like, turn your computer off when you're not using it. Don't keep appliances plugged in that don't need, there are all these appliances have little meters and clocks, and, they're always have lights, I'm on, that's sucking energy all the time. So whatever you can unplug, turn off, etc. I don't know. There were so many good comments. I might actually have to bring some of them back for the next video, because there were many that I wanted to talk about. This is from Stephen K. I have two small rants that sort of came up during the crop failures article. First, earlier today, I was eating with relatives who were about to throw away perfectly good food, but instead offered it to me. Now, I eat all of my food, but I guess this was pretty common with them, and I'm sure in many other households too. I just didn't realize how much food, whole dishes of corn, perfect mashed potatoes, beans, etc., that I've happily eaten out of the fridge with butter, seasoning, etc. No thought of putting it away to eat later, and fuck starving kids in other countries. Just right to the garbage, hadn't I been there to eat it. Also, I now despise picky people at restaurants who frequently send plates back where it's probably dumped in the trash. We live too comfortably in the first world. I can tolerate a lot of stupidity, but wasting food is fucking despicable. Also, this end of the century 2100 bullshit is getting on my nerves. You're called an alarmist or fear-mongering for pointing out how little time there is to address climate change when the reality is simply procrastinating on a massive scale. I put off cleaning my room for weeks at most, but this is the future of the planet. And it's being put off for decades, almost centuries. I even recently saw a suggestion of 2300. So let's say everything is fine until 2100 and there are still people begging for something to be done. Let me guess. Move the date up to 2200, 2300. It's the typical everything is fine, we'll get to that later bullshit. It's hubristic, lazy, procrastinating, and just pure head up the ass stupidity. This over-consuming, food-wasting, royal family worshipping culture is sickening. Hambone also addressed the recklessness of industrial civilization in his Overburden video. Basically, industrial civilization is not the burden on the planet. No. The ecosystems are getting in the way of plundering the planet. All that destructive shit is just so rich. Rich fucks can send a plate back at a restaurant, so wasteful people can throw perfectly good food in the garbage. So we can tweet about Meghan and Harry while we procrastinate for up to a century on turning this ship around. Good stuff from Stephen K. Yes, there's so much to say about this, of course. Yeah, I have a pet peeve in that, the way that we have been conditioned to live in this first world convenience society is that, the entitlement levels are off the charts, like people are like, oh, I can't drink that water because it tastes bad. And I can't do, your insistence on having whatever you want, whatever way you want it, all times of the day, all day long, is a serious problem. I mean, that's one of the biggest causes of waste and consumption, overconsumption of resources, and you really have to toughen up, Buttercup. Just, you're gonna have to, that's what living lightly on the earth means. That's what living simply means. It doesn't mean some nice little thing that you saw on Instagram, like, oh, what a nice thought. No, it actually means like giving up the things that you think that you're entitled to. Like just, ordering food whenever you want, from down the street, just cause you can do it, like, oh, I'm hungry, whatever. Like, we really have to get back to a self-sustaining, much simpler lifestyle. I think, we need to grow our own food, cook our own food, get off the grid, create our own energy if we can, or learn to live without that energy. Study cultures like the Amish, study indigenous cultures that use way less or zero energy, see how they live, watch how they live, study how they live, learn to incorporate those lifestyles into your lifestyle, and not the, we shouldn't be exporting our lifestyle to other parts of the world. We should be importing the simpler, poorer, more indigenous culture, their lifestyles into our lifestyle. That would be the way to do it. That would be the way to mitigate climate change. That would be a good way to do your part and to stop feeding the beast. Stop feeding the beast. Really. And any of those, anybody who can stop driving their car, anybody who can grow their own food, anybody who can get off the electrical grid, anybody who can get off the heating grid, anybody who can do any of that, you're ceasing to feed the beast. And that is great. That's wonderful. And that actually gives those multinationals, those corporations, those people that are, feeding off of you, it gives them less power. So I've ranted enough. Let's read some articles, because I fear that this may get very long. This is from Hindustan Times. Chimps and orangutans could be on the verge of mass extinction. I believe I read something about this maybe a couple months ago. A study finds that many of our closest relatives, primates such as chimpanzees, orangutans, and lemurs, are under serious threat as the human population spread to all corners of the earth. Turns out chimps, orangutans, lemurs, and other cuddle primates are in serious peril. According to a joint study conducted by the German Primate Center and Deutsches Primatenzentrum, many of our closest relatives are under serious threat as the human population spread to all corners of the earth. Primates are fascinating. They are intelligent, live in complex societies, and are a vital part of the ecosystem. Lemurs, lorises, galagos, tarsiers, monkeys, and apes are our closest biological relatives. And just like them, humans are also primates. Remember? An international team of leading primate researchers, including Christian Roos, has analyzed and evaluated the situation of many endangered non-human primate species in Brazil, Madagascar, Indonesia, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. In their study, the researchers investigated the influence of human activities on wild primate populations. The destruction of natural forests and their conversion into agricultural land threatens many species who thereby lose their habitat. However, hunting and the bushmeat trade also lead to a massive and rapid decline of many populations. A simulation of agricultural land expansion by the end of the century showed a decline of up to 78% in the distribution areas of many primate species. In their study, the scientists asked for immediate measures to protect the endangered primate species and supply recommendations for a long-term conservation of primates and to avert primate extinction. Primates live in tropical and subtropical areas and are mainly found in regions of Africa, South America, Madagascar, and Asia. The International Union for Conservation of Nature currently lists 439 species. 65% of these are located in the 4 countries: Brazil, Indonesia, Madagascar, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Around 60% of them are threatened by extinction. Particularly dire is the situation in Indonesia and Madagascar, where 90% of the primate population declined and more than 3/4 of species are endangered. In a comprehensive literature review, the authors of the study analyzed the major threat factors for primates in 4 countries. In Brazil, Madagascar, and Indonesia, the increasing destruction of their habitats is a stressor for animals. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, the bushmeat trade is the biggest threat. In addition, primates are sold illegally as pets or used in traditional medicine. Poverty, lack of education, food insecurity, political instability, and corruption further encourage the depletion of natural resources in countries concerned and make it more difficult to protect the animals. The destruction of the natural environment through deforestation, the expansion of agricultural land, and infrastructure development to transport goods has become a major problem, said Christian Roos, the co-author of the study. The main contributors of this development are the industrial nations. Really? There is a high demand for raw materials such as soy, palm oil, rubber, hardwood, or fossil fuel. The 4 primate-rich countries cover 50% of these export goods to China, India, the US, and Europe. The scientists combined data from the United Nations and World Bank databases to simulate the estimated spread of agricultural land in the 4 countries until the turn of the century. Assuming a worst-case scenario, the researchers were able to predict a decline in the geographical range of primate populations. Accordingly, by the year 2100, 78% of the primate habitats in Brazil, 72% in Indonesia, 62% in Madagascar, and 32% in the Congo could have disappeared. At the same time, the authors investigated the size and distribution of protected areas. Their estimates show that Brazil and Madagascar have around 38%, Indonesia 17%, the Democratic Republic of Congo 14%, primate habitats in protected areas. The majority of the distribution areas are without protection status, and primates are therefore under threat. The authors called for the extension of protected areas, the reforestation of forests, and the planting of corridors as important measures to preserve primate populations. In addition, the local population must be made aware of the precarious situation. Government, scientists, conservation organizations, and economists need to work together to promote sustainable organic farming while preserving traditional lifestyles. In addition, the governments of the countries concerned should work harder to combat illegal hunting, forest destruction, and primate trade. Primates are like canaries in a coal mine, said Roos. They are invaluable for tropical biodiversity, as they are vital for the regeneration of forests and stable ecosystems. Their extinction will serve as an alarm bell for humans and an indication that these habitats will become unusable in the long run. The study appears in the journal Peer Journal 2018. Moving on. Moving on to an article that just about everybody sent me, and I mean that jokingly, but I mean, I saw this article pop up about 10 times at least in the last few days, and quite a few people sent me the same article, so I think I should read it. I don't know if I'm reading the best version of this, but it's going forward. This is from ABC News, Australia. The rate of Antarctic melting has nearly tripled in the last 5 years. The Antarctic ice sheet has lost more than 2,500 billion tons of ice in the past 25 years, and nearly half of that has happened since 2012. An international team of polar scientists found that melting in Antarctica has jumped sharply from an average of 76 billion tons per year prior to 2012 to around 219 billion tons per year each year between 2012 and 2017. That's adding 0.6 of a millimeter to sea levels each year. Antarctica stores enough water to raise global sea levels by 58 meters and has contributed 7.6 millimeters since 1992, according to the research published in Nature today. The latest data is a continuation of previous assessments known as the Ice Sheet Mass Balance Intercomparison Exercise, the IMBIE, which began in 2011 and tracks ice sheet loss from 1992 onwards. IMBIE was established with the support of NASA and the European Space Agency to monitor the changes in ice sheet cover around the world. It uses combined satellite data to measure the Antarctic's ice sheets, changing flow and volume. The increase in melting should act as a wake-up call, according to project leader Professor Andrew Shepard from the University of Leeds. The rapid increase in Antarctic ice loss is due to ocean melting of glaciers in the Amundsen Sea and ice shelf collapse on the Antarctic Peninsula, he said in a statement. These events and the sea level rise they've triggered are an indicator of climate change and should be of concern for the governments we trust to protect our coastal cities and communities. Emerging Antarctic sea level rise research points to a worst case scenario. West Antarctica contributed the most ice loss from the continent, shedding nearly 160 billion tons each year since 2012. Although the general trend was of reduction, there was some increase in ice cover in East Antarctica. This region has grown by an average of around 5 billion tons per year over the 25-year period, although margins of error can put that figure into the negative. The researchers attribute the increased losses in West Antarctica and the Antarctic Peninsula to changes in regional floating ice shelves, which can provide a buffer to continental ice sheets. In a separate analysis piece in Nature Today, climate scientist and Antarctic policy expert Professor Rob DeCanto warned that Antarctica may contribute. Hold on one second. All right, man, geez, the noise levels today are off the charts. In a separate analysis piece in Nature Today, climate scientist and Antarctic policy expert Professor Rob DeCanto warned that Antarctica may contribute more to sea level rise than previously thought. Is that so? Emerging science is pointing to more extreme worst case scenarios with regards to sea level rise from Antarctica. So I'm sorry to laugh. Yeah. But the good news is that a reduction in emissions in line with the aspirations of the Paris Climate Agreement dramatically reduces the risk of flooding our coastlines in future decades and centuries. Really? Do you want to explain the science behind that, Captain Optimist? But there is also room for caution in how this latest data is interpreted. It's too early to say whether this melting trend will continue or slow down, according to the CSIRO physical oceanographer Dr. Steve Rintoul, who wasn't involved in the study. It's a difficult one for us to answer because the time series is still pretty short, he said. There's still a wide range in projections between what is going to happen in Antarctica in the future. However, he said that there is growing evidence that projections of Antarctica's influence on sea level rise may have been underestimated. Yeah, what we have seen as the climate has warmed is that more warm water is reaching the Antarctic ice sheet, and that's what is melting the ice, he said. As sea ice retreats, floating Antarctic ice shelves are more exposed to destruction by wave action, according to a separate paper also published in Nature Today and not affiliated with the previous study. However, the role of sea ice in buffering ice shelves and continental ice sheets is rarely factored into Antarctic ice loss modeling, according to lead researcher Dr. Rob Massam from the Australian Antarctic Institute. His team analyzed the Larsen A and Larsen B and Wilkins ice shelf disintegration events and found that lack of sea ice was a common factor. It just so happens that offshore from those ice shelves, it's a hotspot of sea ice loss, Dr. Massam said. Ice shelves play a significant role in buttressing the discharge of grounded ice from the ice sheet into the ocean, and it's that ice that contributes to sea level rise. He argued that sea ice loss needs to be considered. All right, I'm dealing with many problems today. Future modeling in order to more accurately forecast the contribution of Antarctic ice sheet to sea level rise in coming decades. The disintegration was an eye-opening thing. The glaciers that were feeding into those ice shelves accelerated by up to 8-fold after the disintegration, and that happened pretty immediately. This is a concerning thing if you consider that ice shelves exist around 75% of the periphery of Antarctica. If this kind of thing happens more in the future, we have to be aware of that. All right. Not good news. So it completely accelerated in the last 5 years, and somehow, so it's going to stay at that level. It's going to slow down. It's going to speed up even more. What are your answers? A, B, or C? Moving on. Mammals are becoming more nocturnal to avoid humans, study finds. And I was actually talking to my daughter about the fact that animals like to avoid humans. They don't necessarily want contact with us. She's afraid of, she's 4. She's afraid of, mountain lions, of course. I'm afraid of mountain lions, snakes, etc., spiders, everything. So I'm trying to tell her that she doesn't have to be as concerned as she is, but humans have been displacing wildlife since, well, forever, but as we encroach into every corner of the planet, there are fewer places for animals to hide, leaving some no choice but to adjust their daily schedules and embrace the nightlife. Just like we make dinner at a specific time each day, usually, wild animals time their feeding, sleeping, and reproducing around whether they feel safe, whether their food is available, and if anyone else is competing for it. Examining 72 studies from all over the world, scientists have found humans are disrupting the daily routines of some mammals, forcing them to take their daily tasks into the dark, as reported today in the journal Science. The research looked at 62 species on 6 continents across forests and deserts from Alaska to Australia. Found that mammals studied were 1.36 times more nocturnal around people when compared to natural conditions, according to lead author Caitlin Gaynor. An animal that would typically split its activity equally between day and night increased its nighttime activity to 68% of its total activity, said Ms. Gaynor, who is a PhD student from the University of California, Berkeley. This is a pretty striking change, particularly as it was so consistent across the planet. The changes were smaller for animals that were nocturnal to begin with, but even then we saw that they became more strictly nocturnal around people. The study found the move towards night occurred regardless of how benign the human activity disturbing the animal was, which Ms. Gaynor said was alarming. When hiking out in the woods, we may think that we're leaving no trace, but our presence alone can have lasting consequences. Yes, yes, yes. There was a strong response to urban development, which is really major transformations of the landscape from intensive human activity, but there were also similar shifts in response to human recreation. Just because we don't see wildlife on a daily basis doesn't mean it's not out there and our actions aren't affecting it. Deakin University wildlife ecologist Yuan Ritchie, who was not involved directly but contributed to a study examining the meta-analysis, said the research was eye-opening. The consequences for this individual species, but also communities and conserving the consequences of this for individual species, but also communities and conserving native biodiversity could be profound. But he cautioned it was not yet well understood and said the study considered a relatively small number of mammals. Ecosystems changed by newly nocturnal predators. As Mufasa once told us in The Lion King, we are all connected in the great circle of life, and if the lions changed their hunting habits, their kingdom's order would unravel. Behavioral changes, like being more nocturnal, can cascade throughout food webs and have effects not just on individual species, but on entire ecological communities, Ms. Gaynor said. For example, when coyotes in the Santa Cruz Mountains in California become more nocturnal in popular hiking areas, the whole ecosystem shifted. They actually changed their diet and switched to more nocturnal prey. And so during the day, more squirrels and birds were active. The coyotes' behavior changed the prey dynamics too, Ms. Gaynor said. People may be reshaping the timing of both predator-prey interactions and competition between prey species. 2012 study of dingoes by Dr. Ritchie and colleagues included in Ms. Gaynor's meta-analysis highlighted the complexity of species interactions in the presence of humans. Dingoes stay away when humans are most active in order to avoid persecution, he said. This allows feral cats to be more active earlier in the night, which could potentially negatively affect native species that are their prey. Dinosaurs also forced mammals into the night. Hey, we're like dinosaurs. This new research suggests mammals have a remarkable ability to adapt to new threats. And this shift to a more nocturnal lifestyle may have been made possible thanks to their common ancestors, Ms. Gaynor said. Mammals were exclusively nocturnal during the time of the dinosaurs, because dinosaurs were this ubiquitous, terrifying force across the whole planet. She said it was only after extinction of the day-hogging dinosaurs that mammals emerged into the light, according to Ms. Gaynor. It's kind of ironic that humans are now the ubiquitous, terrifying force on the planet, and we are driving mammals back into the night. Light pollution may contribute. While light pollution, excessive night light from human activities, was not examined specifically in the study, Ms. Gaynor said it could be another explanation for why some mammals increase their nighttime activity. If there's a night light that's allowing them to see better, maybe they are able to expand the amount of time they spend active at night. However, the shift to nocturnality was occurring for mammals in areas where there was no night light, so it's not always having an effect. On the other hand, wildlife ecologist Kylie Robert thinks that some of the animals might be actively avoiding artificial nightlight rather than using it to see better. Dr. Robert said, as some mammals were switching from being day active to nocturnal, there was a strong argument they weren't taking advantage of the nightlight in urban areas. These species are likely to perceive artificial lighting as increased day length and may take advantage of this, but they're not. Yet another effect, lovely effect of human beings on animals. Yeah, if we're really serious about leaving alone wildlife or parts of wilderness, we actually have to really, really leave it alone. Like, you know, it's not enough to just have areas, you know, protected areas for like we really need to just stay out. We need, you know, we can't have nature reserves and then, you know, have everybody like go ahead and, you know, climb rocks and go hiking and camp out and, you know, go fishing, you know, in these nature reserves. Like, we really need to just keep our butts away. Lastly, sorry, this has been a long video. It's going to get a little longer. This is an article from Caitlin Johnson, one of my favorite authors to read, some sandbox stuff. This is entitled Optimism. Off the top of my head, I have a hard time thinking of anything sleazier than smearing peace talks in order to gain partisan political points. But that has indeed been the theme of the last few days when it comes to the Singapore summit. Liberal pundits everywhere have been busily circulating the narrative that Kim Jong-un played Trump by getting him to temporarily halt military drills in exchange for suspended nuclear testing. It was the most fundamental beginning of peace negotiations and a slight de-escalation in tensions on the Korean Peninsula, but the way they talk about it, you'd think Kim had taken off from Singapore in Air Force One with the keys to Fort Knox and Melania on his lap. I'm not sure how far up the military-industrial complex's ass one's head needs to be to think that one single step towards peace is a gigantic take-all-the-chips win for the impoverished North Korea. But many of Trump's political enemies are taking it even further. Senate Democrats have introduced a bill to make it more difficult for Trump to withdraw U.S. troops from South Korea. Because while you can always count on Capitol Hill to make it incredibly easy for a president to deploy military personnel around the globe, giving that same office the power to bring troops home is completely a different matter. Surprising no one, MSNBC's cartoon children's program, The Rachel Maddow Show, took home the trophy for jaw-dropping, shark-jumping ridiculousness with an 18-minute Alex Jones impression, claiming that the chief architect of the Korean negotiations was none other than, and if you can guess whose name I'm going to write once we get out of these parentheses, I deeply envy your ignorance on this matter, Vladimir Putin. Saner voices have been pushing back against this madness. None, in my opinion, more lucidly than the South Korea-born peace activist Christian On in an interview with Sarah Lazar for In These Times, who discussed how Trump's proven willingness to turn on a dime and engage in dangerous brinksmanship with North Korea makes it especially reckless for self-professed liberals to pressure the president to be more confrontational. It is very dangerous to pressure Trump to be hardline, On said. We have put all of our efforts into ensuring this goes well, and it is not undermined. Look who's in Trump's cabinet. Look who's in Trump's cabinet. John Bolton, Mike Pompeo, and tomorrow is the confirmation hearing for Harry Harris, the former head of the Pacific Command, a military man with a hardline position against China and North Korea. Now likely the new ambassador to South Korea. If things don't go well, we are in an incredibly dangerous situation. Yeah. Rachel Maddow is the Cold War hero of the Democrats. Just to go back a paragraph. On makes the case that people who distrust Trump should be the most eager to see him strike a peace deal, and of course they should. This president is facilitating acts of military violence and dangerous escalations around the world. Anyone who isn't relieved by the possibility of one powder keg being diffused in that rampage actually has a lot more faith in Trump's competence than they're pretending to. Less dangerous than the appeals to Trump's massive ego that he should be more tough and warlike are the constant appeals to pessimism I'm seeing from smug, world-weary commentators, which in my opinion are still pernicious in their own way. Pessimism is a hell of a drug. Since most humans are deeply conditioned organisms and thus generally predictable, any bet against their ability to break out of their old habitual patterns is generally a safe one. Political analysts who do this are rewarded with both a reputation for making accurate predictions, which they will never fail to remind anyone of or crow about, and the hit to their brains will reward center that they got from being right. If you enjoy being proven right and feeling smug about it, pessimism is the drug for you. The Korean Peninsula's peace negotiations are replete with opportunities to make pessimistic predictions about Trump messing it all up, about agreements falling through, about settling back into the same old patterns, which have been diminishing the quality of tens of millions of lives on both sides of the demilitarized zone. It is easy to make such predictions about the plight of the Korean people and about the plight of our species in general, but it is optimism which will actually bring us out of these old patterns. Indeed, that's all optimism really is when you come right down to it, a faith in the human ability to pull out of the unwholesome patterns. Whether you're discussing the possibility of an individual maintaining sobriety, the possibility of two nations putting aside generations-old hostilities and moving into a new relationship, or the possibility of our species pulling out of its omnicidal, ecocidal trajectory towards extinction and turning its intellectual and creative powers towards creating a collaborative relationship with one another and with the environment instead, you are talking about humans breaking old patterns. Yay, Caitlin Johnson. That was a really great paragraph. I'm going to link this below if y'all want to read this. But yes, the revolution that we are fighting is being fought first and foremost, not by the politicians, not by the activists, not by the journalists, but by the healers, the people who have committed to doing their own inner heavy lifting and uprooting their old unhelpful conditioning patterns so that they can move through the world consciously and efficaciously instead of reacting unconsciously through the perceptual filters and mental habits born of childhood traumas and confused coping mechanisms. These are the people who are on the front lines of the battle to draw humanity out of its old, unwholesome societal patterns born of countless generations of war, slavery, exploitation, and degradation, and into its new potentiality. And they are all optimists. Nobody ever rose above themselves by the firm belief that they couldn't. And no societal evolution ever took place because its leaders believed it wasn't possible. When you're talking about things that people don't have much control over, like the weather, it doesn't matter much if you're a pessimist or an optimist. It's going to rain when it's going to rain, whether you think it or will or not. But when you are talking about the ability to transcend old patterns, self-fulfilling prophecy comes into play. The belief that your individual conditioning patterns are unchangeable guarantees that they will remain as they are. Promulgating cynicism and pessimism makes humanity that much more locked into its old patterns. Excuse me. Luckily, the opposite is also true. A confidence that you are not defined by your mental habits, nor are you doomed to repeat them, gives you the ability to heal and rise above them. Promulgating optimism and the belief that humanity can win this thing makes us that much more likely to. And there's a quote here: the moment you come to trust chaos, you see God clearly. Chaos is divine order versus human order. Change is divine order versus human order. When the chaos becomes safety to you, then you know you're seeing God clearly. This is from Carolyn Miss. And it is already happening. A U.S. president meeting with the North Korean leader was until recently unthinkable. The anointed queen, Hillary Clinton, failed to be installed into office. The old mass media monopoly on information and dominant narratives is eroding more and more every day. Bang. Day by day, we're seeing gaps in the old patterns and becoming a little more prone to expecting the unexpected. The movement into the light of consciousness is a movement out of our old, deeply conditioned patterns. This means that the more we move away from our trajectory of death and destruction, the more wildly unexpected occurrences will start popping up. The gaps between the bars of our cages will emerge from way out of left field because they will not arise from the old repetitive cycles which brought us here. The pessimist won't see it coming. The optimist won't either, but will be delighted when it arrives. Pessimists get to be right most of the time, and that is very nice for them. But it's optimists who are pointed in the direction of light and life. It's optimists who will save the world. Be an optimist. Ta-da! Thank you, Caitlin Johnson, for those wise and very insightful words. Hope you all like that article. But that, I just wanted to say, that's one of the things I think that draws people to the doomosphere, and I'm one of those people. I I have an innate pessimism. I also have an innate optimism, but the pessimism is a very driving force for me, and to get into the habit or the pattern of like, we're screwed, we're all we're fucked, we can't make it out, we can't do anything right, we're not going to win, we're not going to make it, we're not going to change. I'm a living example of change. I've been sober for 16 years. I drank and did drugs for 18 years. And probably most people didn't think that I was going to stop doing what I was doing. Probably most people were taking bets on, how early I was going to hit my deathbed. But that didn't happen. So there's also other, fairly unrealistic things that I've accomplished in my life. I became a full-time touring musician after the age of 35. So like, does that, how often does that happen? Most people get to the age of 35 if they're a musician or artist or whatever, and they're like, well, time to hang it up and get a real job. I went in the opposite direction, and I haven't hit any Billboard charts or anything yet, but I've made a living playing music. It is possible to make a living doing art if that's what you want to do, and at any age that you want to do it. You just have to not believe the things that everybody says, like, what are you doing with your life, why are you doing this, shouldn't you get a job, you're too old, you're et cetera, all of those things. You can make your own reality, and I believe that we can make a different reality than what is coming towards us if we think about it, if we consider what the solutions might look like, if we actually put ourselves mentally into a space of what is the path through this. It's not enough to we can all sit around and just call it quits, or just say this is it, or time's up, and enjoy your life. We could do all that, and that would be perfectly fine and perfectly logical, I guess, on some level. But we also can do the illogical and the unthinkable and probably improbable. we can think ourselves into what a future may possibly look like. And we still don't know what negative or positive feedbacks will be coming our way. You know, there could be some major negative feedbacks that, you know, thermal halene circulations flipping and blah, 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 et cetera. So, you know, if we carry on just destroying ourselves and destroying the planet, and we don't give ourselves a chance for a window of possibility, then we're just ensuring that we're going to destroy ourselves and kill the planet, which sounds really, really dumb to me. It just sounds really stupid to me. Like, you know, but whatever, you know. There are those that are going to say, that is our fate, and that's the way it's going. And there are those that will not. And so I think we should give space and voice to all those possibilities. And I'm hoping, I'm going to smoke a big old bowl of hopium right now. I'm hoping that maybe we can have a saner path forward. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. Hoping to be back tomorrow with another video. Until next time, peace.